Captain Vekthar stood on the bridge of his ship and watched his world end. Outside the viewing port, the darkness of space was broken by explosions. Each bright flash meant another ship had died. Each silent burst of light meant more of his people were gone forever. The Kalreth Empire had ruled this part of space for 3,000 years. They were powerful. They were advanced. They thought nothing could defeat them. But now, as Vekthar watched the enemy ships tear through his fleet, he knew they had been wrong. The creatures they called the Devourers had appeared 6 weeks ago. No one knew where they came from. No one understood what they wanted. They just destroyed everything in their path. Their black ships moved through space like sharks hunting in dark water. Their weapons absorbed energy like a hungry mouth swallowing food. Nothing the Kalreth tried could stop them. 17 star systems had gone silent. Billions of people were dead or missing. The Devourers consumed planets and moved on to the next target. They were unstoppable. "Sir, the colony shields are failing," said Simral, his communications officer. She was young, barely out of training. Her voice shook with fear. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they break through to the surface." Vekthar looked down at the planet below. Theta 7 was a mining colony. 3 million civilians lived there in underground shelters. They had families. They had children. They had lives that would end in minutes if the Devourers reached them. His fleet had started with 40 ships. Now only 12 remained. The tactical display showed 8 Devourer vessels surrounding the planet like wolves around wounded prey. His ships had fought for hours. They had fired every weapon they had. Nothing worked. The enemy ships just absorbed the energy and kept coming. "Send the evacuation order," Vekthar said quietly. His 4 eyes were tired. He had not slept in 2 days. "All remaining ships are to retreat and save what civilians they can." It was a death sentence for millions. He knew it. But staying would only mean everyone died instead of just most of them. Simral opened her mouth to acknowledge the order. Then every sensor on the bridge screamed at once. The sound was loud and harsh. Warning lights flashed red across every console. Officers shouted in confusion. Something had just appeared in space near their position. The readings made no sense. "What is that?" Vekthar demanded. "I don't know, sir," the sensor officer said. His hands moved fast across his controls. Something just ripped through subspace 5,000 kilometers away. The energy signature is like nothing in our database. It's crude and violent, but very powerful. On the main viewing screen, space itself seemed to tear open. A hole appeared in reality, glowing with strange light. And then something came through. The ship that emerged was massive. 2 kilometers of gray metal that looked rough and industrial. It had none of the elegant curves of Kalreth vessels. No artistic beauty. No graceful lines. It was angular and brutal, covered in weapons that looked primitive but deadly. Railguns jutted from its hull like spikes. Missile pods clustered along its sides like insect eggs. Point defense turrets dotted every surface. The ship looked like it was built for one purpose only: war. Strange markings covered the hull in a language Vekthar had never seen. The translation computer struggled to make sense of them. Finally, it produced words. USSN Defiance. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," Simral said. "All frequencies. They're broadcasting to everyone in the system." "Put it through." A voice filled the bridge. It was female and spoke in a language the Kalreth translation system had trouble processing. The words came through choppy at first, then clearer as the computer learned. "This is Commander Nicole Grant of the United Systems Space Navy. We received your distress beacon. Hang tight. We're getting you out of this." Vekthar felt confusion wash over him. "Humans," he whispered. He had heard of them in reports. A young species from a backwater region of space. They had barely achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago. The Kalreth had dismissed them as primitives who would never matter on the galactic stage. Their technology was crude. Their ships were simple. They were nobody. But as the Defiance moved toward the Devourer fleet, Vekthar watched something that changed everything he thought he knew. The human ship opened fire. The sound of railguns. Firing could not travel in space, but Vekthar imagined he could hear them anyway. Tungsten rods as big as telephone poles shot out at incredible speed. They crossed the distance to the nearest Devourer ship in seconds. The Devourer's armor had absorbed every energy weapon the Calreth fired. Lasers, plasma bolts, particle beams, all of it had been useless. But these solid metal rods did not care about energy absorption. They hit the black hull with pure kinetic force. The Devourer ship cracked like glass. The first round punched through the hull. The second followed the same path. The third, fourth, and fifth rounds tore open a massive hole. Atmosphere vented into space. Secondary explosions rippled across the alien vessel. It tumbled away, dead and broken. Impossible, breathed Vekthar's tactical officer. But it was not impossible. It was happening. The Defiance rolled in space like a predator and fired again. Her missiles launched in waves. Nuclear warheads detonated around a second Devourer ship. The explosions were not absorbed. They were physical force, pressure waves expanding in space. The enemy vessel tried to adapt, but before it could, railgun rounds hammered it from another angle. "Target destroyed," came a male voice over the communication channel. "Cycling to the next one." The Calreth fleet hung in space, forgotten by the Devourers. The enemy ships had turned all their attention to this new threat. They recognized danger when they saw it. 3 Devourer vessels moved to surround the human ship. Their weapons charged. Black energy crackled along their hulls. They fired together, coordinating their attack. The Defiance's shields flared bright blue. The enemy weapons hit hard. For a moment, Vekthar thought the human ship would break apart, but then the shields stabilized. The Defiance accelerated, moving faster than any ship her size should be able to move. She rolled, dove, and came up firing. Her laser batteries carved through one Devourer's sensor arrays, blinding it. Her missiles overwhelmed another's point defenses. And those railguns kept firing, each shot a hammer blow against ships designed to be invincible. "Sir," Simral said, her voice full of wonder. "Their weapons are all kinetic-based. Solid projectiles and explosive warheads. The Devourers cannot absorb physical mass. Their entire defense system is useless." Vekthar stared at the battle. "Why did we never think of that?" "We abandoned kinetic weapons 700 years ago, sir. We thought them too primitive for modern warfare." Another Devourer died. The human ship's railguns had torn it completely in half. "Perhaps we were wrong about what primitive means," Vekthar said softly. Commander Grant's voice came through again. "Calreth vessels, this is Defiance. We're going to draw these things away from the planet. Use the time to evacuate your civilians. We'll handle the heavy lifting." The human ship changed course. Her engines burned bright blue, pushing her to even greater speed. 5 Devourer vessels broke formation and followed her. They sensed an easy kill. 1 ship against 5. The humans would die. But Vekthar was starting to think the Devourers had made a terrible mistake. "All ships," he ordered, "begin evacuation operations immediately. And someone get me everything we have on humanity. I want to know who these people are and why they just saved us." As his fleet moved to save the colonists, Vekthar watched the human warship lead her enemies away. She was outnumbered. She was alone. But somehow she did not look like the one in danger. The Devourers looked like they were the ones who should be afraid. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly when predicted. 73 black ships tore through the fabric of space and entered the Calreth home system like a swarm of locusts. Their hulls absorbed the light from the distant sun, making them look like holes in reality itself. On the surface of Calreth Prime, 200 billion people looked up at the sky and prayed. They knew what was coming. They had heard the reports from other systems. They knew that when the Devourers came, worlds died, but today would be different. The Devourer commander, a creature whose name could not be translated into any known language, studied the tactical display. The enemy fleet was larger than expected. 97 vessels instead of the 30 they had anticipated. But numbers meant nothing. The Devourers had faced larger forces before. They always won. The enemy ships were arranged in a strange formation. Large crystalline vessels formed a wall between the Devourers and the planet. Smaller ships clustered behind them. And scattered throughout were crude gray vessels that looked primitive and weak. The Devourer commander signaled the attack. The fleet moved forward in perfect unison. Their weapons charged. Black energy crackled along their hulls. They would sweep aside this resistance like they had swept aside all others. Then the humans opened fire. The Defiance spoke first. Her railguns launched rounds at velocities that bent space itself. The tungsten projectiles crossed 1,000 kilometers in seconds and hammered into the lead Devourer ship. The alien vessel tried to adapt, tried to harden its hull, but kinetic energy cared nothing for adaptation. The ship's armor cracked. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal systems failed. Target 1 hit, Kyle Morrison reported from weapons. Significant damage to their forward section. All across the human line, ships fired. The Valor and Redemption wove through the formation like dancers, their railguns creating a crossfire that caught 3 Devourer vessels in a death trap. The Dakota and Montana formed an anchor point, their heavy batteries firing in perfect synchronization. Each shot was calculated to hit where the previous one had weakened the target. The carrier Midway released her fighters. 200 small craft streamed from her launch bays like angry bees. Each one carried specialized missiles designed to penetrate and detonate inside enemy hulls. The pilots were young and brave and absolutely fearless. The Devourer commander felt something it had not felt in centuries: confusion. These primitive kinetic weapons were not supposed to be effective. Energy absorption technology was superior. That was established fact, yet Devourer ships were being damaged. Some were being destroyed. The Devourers adapted their tactics. They focused their fire on the Calreth shield wall, trying to break through to the weaker ships behind. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the crystalline vessels with devastating force. Captain Vekthar felt his ship shake under the assault. Shields flared bright blue. Warning lights flashed across his bridge. But the Calreth ships held. Their shields were designed to absorb energy. This at least they could do. Return fire, Vekthar ordered. All batteries. Make them work for it. The Calreth might not be able to hurt the Devourers significantly with their energy weapons, but they could distract them. They could keep the enemy focused on the shield wall while the humans did the real damage. War leader Kresh watched from the bridge of his flagship and felt his blood burn hot. The Vorshan had been slaves. They had been conquered and beaten down, but they had never forgotten how to fight. Now was their time. All ships maximum acceleration, he growled. Boarding pods ready? We are going to show these creatures what happens when they face warriors instead of victims. The Vorshan heavy cruisers broke formation and accelerated toward the Devourer line. Their hulls were thick and armored, designed for close combat. They absorbed fire that would have destroyed lighter vessels. Their shields held just long enough. Then they crashed into the Devourer formation like hammers. The first Vorshan ship slammed into a Devourer vessel at ramming speed. The impact would have destroyed a human ship. But Vorshan vessels were built different. The cruiser's reinforced prow punched through the enemy's hull. Before the Devourer could recover, boarding pods launched from point-blank range. Each pod carried 20 Vorshan warriors in full combat armor. They punched through the alien hull and deployed inside. The Devourers had never faced boarding actions before. Their ships were not designed for internal defense. When enraged Vorshan warriors tore through their corridors with plasma weapons and explosive charges, the Devourers learned a new meaning of fear. 3 Devourer ships went dark as their systems were sabotaged from within. A 4th exploded when Vorshan engineers overloaded its power core. Nicole watched the battle unfold on her tactical display and felt grim satisfaction. The plan was working. The Devourers were confused and disorganized. They did not know how to respond to attacks from multiple directions using different types of weapons. Morrison, target their command ships, she ordered, the ones hanging back and coordinating the others. I want them blind and confused. Identifying targets now, firing. The Defiance's weapons spoke again. Her railguns tracked on a Devourer vessel that had been directing 3 others. The first salvo destroyed its communication arrays. The second salvo cracked its hull. The third salvo finished the job. Across the battlefield, coordinated attacks broke down as the Devourers lost their command structure. Individual ships began fighting independently, making mistakes, leaving openings. The Telic Confederation ships darted through those openings like wolves. Their missile boats were fast and agile. They identified damaged targets and swarmed them with coordinated strikes. One telecaptain had once been a pirate. He knew how to find weakness and exploit it. The battle raged for an hour. Ships exploded on both sides. The Calreth shield wall lost 6 vessels to concentrated fire. The Vorshan lost 4 cruisers in their boarding actions. Human fighters died by the dozens as they pressed home their attacks. But the Devourers were losing. For the first time since they had appeared in this sector, they were losing. Then sensors screamed across every ship in the fleet. A massive spatial distortion tore open at the edge of the system. Something enormous was coming through. Something that dwarfed every ship on the battlefield. The Devourer flagship emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare made real. 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that made the other Devourer ships look like children's toys. Its hull was darker than black, seeming to absorb not just light but hope itself. What in the void is that? Peter breathed. Nicole felt cold wash through her. The tactical computer was struggling to analyze the new threat. Every reading it produced made the situation worse. The flagship's weapons were beyond anything they had faced. One shot from its main gun could crack a planet. The massive ship's weapons powered up. Space itself seemed to bend around them. Nicole realized with horror what she was seeing. Gravitational weapons. The flagship could manipulate gravity itself. All ships scatter, she shouted into the comm. Do not give it a clear shot. But the warning came too late. The Devourer flagship fired. A beam of concentrated gravitational energy lanced across space. It hit a Calreth cruiser that was still moving into position. The ship did not explode. It compressed, folded in on itself. In 3 seconds, a vessel that had carried 800 crew members became a ball of crushed metal barely 20 meters across. Then it simply ceased to exist. Collapsed into nothing. Across the Allied fleet, panic spread. Ships broke formation. Some tried to run. Others fired desperately at the flagship, their weapons having no effect on its massive shields. Nicole watched her carefully constructed plan fall apart. The Devourers had brought their ultimate weapon. Nothing in the Allied fleet could match it. They were going to lose. 200 billion people on the planet below were going to die. Unless... An idea formed in Nicole's mind. It was crazy. It was suicidal. It probably would not even work. But it was the only chance they had. She looked around her bridge, at Peter with his scarred hands, at Morrison with his young face, at Sophie Martinez, who should have been exploring the universe, not dying to save it. I need to speak to the crew, Nicole said quietly. Peter looked at her, and his eyes widened. Nicole, no. There has to be another way. There isn't. You know there isn't. She activated the ship-wide comm. Her voice would reach every deck, every compartment, every crew member on the Defiance. All hands, this is Commander Grant. I'm going to be honest with you. That flagship out there is beyond anything we can handle in a normal fight. Our weapons cannot hurt it. Our shields cannot stop it. If we keep fighting this way, we will lose. Everyone will lose. She paused, gathering her courage. But there is one way we can stop it. One way we can give the fleet a chance to finish the job. I'm going to take the Defiance on a ramming course. We're going to get close enough to detonate our entire nuclear arsenal at point-blank range. The explosion should overwhelm their shields. It will crack that flagship open. Silence filled the comm. Then Nicole continued. I am ordering all non-essential personnel to evacuate immediately. Get to the escape pods. Get clear. The essential crew will stay to pilot the ship and trigger the detonation. This is voluntary. Anyone who wants to leave can leave. No one will think less of you. She waited for the rush to the escape pods, for the panic. The meeting room on the Defiance was crowded with holographic projections. Faces from a dozen different species filled the space, each one representing a ship or fleet that had answered Nicole's call. Some looked hopeful. Some looked scared. All of them looked desperate. Nicole stood at the head of the table and tried not to think about how impossible this was. 3 days ago, she had sent out her message across every communication channel in the sector. She had not known if anyone would answer. She had not known if this would work, but they had come. Captain Vekthar's hologram showed him on the bridge of his flagship. His 4 eyes watched Nicole with an expression she was learning to read as respect. Behind him, 32 Calreth vessels waited in formation. It was all that remained of their once mighty fleet. Next to Vekthar's image stood war leader Kresh of the Vorshan. He was a reptilian creature with scales like armor. One of his eyes was missing, replaced by a scar that ran down his face. His people had been conquered by the Calreth 2 centuries ago. By all rights, he should hate them, But he was here. The Vorshan bring 15 heavy cruisers, Kresh said. His voice was rough like grinding stones. We have not forgotten what the Kalreth did to our people. But the Devourers do not care about old grudges. They will consume us all if we do not stand together. Other holograms spoke up. The Telic Confederation had sent 12 vessels. The Mining Guild offered converted haulers with improvised weapons. Independent traders and mercenaries had shown up with whatever ships they could fly. Even pirates had answered the call, knowing that the Devourers would leave nothing for them to steal if they won. And then there were the other human ships. The destroyers Valor and Redemption had arrived yesterday. The carrier Midway came with her full complement of fighters. The heavy cruisers Dakota and Montana brought enough firepower to crack a planet. All of them were commanded by officers Nicole knew. Some were friends. Some were rivals. All of them were ready to fight. Total count is 97 ships, said Peter Hayes, reading from his datapad, against an estimated 73 Devourer vessels. Better than I expected, worse than I hoped. Nicole nodded. Let's talk strategy. The Devourers are going to come in expecting the same thing they've seen before. Energy weapons, conventional tactics, ships that rely on shields and armor. We need to hit them with everything they don't expect. She activated the tactical display. A holographic image of the Kalreth home system appeared above the table. The planet hung in the center, surrounded by defensive stations and patrol routes. The Devourers will likely come out of hyperspace here. Nicole pointed to a region near the system's edge. It's the standard entry point. They'll want to group up before attacking. That gives us a window. A window for what? Asked Captain Linda Shaw of the Dakota. She was older than Nicole, with gray in her black hair and scars on her hands. She had fought in the Earth-Mars conflicts decades ago. A window to hit them while they're still organizing. They expect us to sit in orbit and defend. Instead, we're going to meet them halfway. Vekthar's hologram leaned forward. Commander, that is very aggressive. If we leave the planet undefended and they break through our lines, the civilians will be helpless. They're helpless anyway if we lose, Nicole said bluntly. The only way we win this is to be unpredictable. We hit hard, hit fast, and don't give them time to adapt. War Leader Kresh bared his fangs in what might have been a smile. I like this plan. The Vorshan do not believe in defensive battles. We will fight beside the humans and show these Devourers what happens when they attack the wrong prey. Nicole spent the next hour explaining her plan. It was complicated. It relied on perfect timing. And it assumed the Devourers would react the way she predicted. Any one of a dozen things could go wrong, but it was the best chance they had. The Kalreth ships will form our shield wall, Nicole explained. Your shields are strong and your ships can take a beating. You'll absorb their initial assault and keep them focused on you. While you do what? Vekthar asked. While we do what humans do best. We adapt and attack. Nicole pointed to the flanking positions on the display. Human vessels will hit them from multiple angles with kinetic weapons. The Vorshan will close for boarding actions. Their ships aren't designed for internal fighting. We'll use that. And the smaller vessels? Asked one of the Telic commanders. Missile boats. Your ships are fast and maneuverable. You'll launch coordinated strikes on damaged targets. Think of yourselves as wolves taking down wounded prey. The meeting continued for 2 more hours. They discussed formations, fallback positions, and emergency protocols. Every captain asked questions. Every species had concerns. But slowly a real plan came together. When the meeting finally ended, only Peter's hologram remained. The old commander looked tired. You know this is crazy, right? He said. Nicole smiled. When has that ever stopped us? Fair point. How are you feeling about all this? She was quiet for a moment. Honestly? Terrified. We're leading 97 ships against an enemy that's destroyed 17 star systems. The odds are terrible. A lot of good people are going to die tomorrow. But if we don't try, everyone dies. Every civilian on that planet. Every person in this sector. So yeah, I'm scared. But I'm also angry. These Devourers think they can just take whatever they want. Someone needs to show them they're wrong. Peter nodded slowly. Your brother would be proud of you. Nicole felt a sharp pain in her chest. Jake had died 60 years ago in a stupid war over mining rights on Mars. She had been 19. He had been 17. The war had ended a month later. Pointless and wasteful. Jake died because people didn't try hard enough to avoid war, Nicole said quietly. I'm here because sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes you have to fight, but you fight for the right reasons. You fight to protect people, not to conquer them. That's why they follow you, Peter said. You fight for something bigger than yourself. After he signed off, Nicole sat alone in the meeting room. Outside the viewing port, the assembled fleet hung in space. 97 ships from a dozen species. Most of them had been enemies at some point in their history. Now they were allies because one human commander had asked them to be. Lieutenant Sophie Martinez entered, carrying a datapad. Commander, we're receiving final supply reports. Most ships are at full ammunition and fuel. A few of the smaller vessels need more missiles. Transfer them from our reserves. Everyone needs to be at full strength. Yes, ma'am. Sophie hesitated. Commander, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you really think we can win this? Nicole looked at the young officer. She was barely 23 years old. Fresh out of the academy, she should be exploring new systems and making discoveries, not preparing for a battle that might kill her. Honestly, I don't know, Nicole said. The Devourers are tough and they've beaten everyone they've faced so far. But they've never faced all of us together. They've never fought an enemy that refuses to give up. So yeah, I think we have a chance. Maybe not a great one, but a chance. That's good enough for me, Sophie said with a small smile. After she left, Nicole walked to her quarters. On her desk sat a small photograph in a protective case. Her and Jake at the academy, both of them smiling and young and stupid, before the war. Before she learned what it cost to fight. We're doing this for all the kids like you, she told the photograph. All the people who deserve a chance to grow up in peace. I know you'd understand. She sealed the photograph in her uniform pocket. If the worst happened tomorrow, she wanted it close. She wanted Jake with her when she faced the darkness. The comm system beeped. Vekthar's voice came through. Commander Grant, our scouts report the Devourer fleet has entered hyperspace. They will arrive in approximately 4 hours. Nicole took a deep breath. Thank you, Captain. Signal all ships to move to their starting positions. It's time. As the fleet began to move, Nicole stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, 73 enemy ships were coming to destroy everything. But standing between them and their goal were 97 vessels crewed by beings who had decided that enough was enough. The Devourers thought they were unstoppable. They thought no one could stand against them. They had never met humanity before. They had never encountered species that would stand together despite their differences. Tomorrow they would learn what happened when you pushed too hard. Tomorrow they would discover that the galaxy had teeth. Tomorrow would decide everything. Nicole closed her eyes and prayed to whatever gods might be listening. Not for victory. She was not that naive. She prayed for courage. She prayed for her crew. She prayed that when this was over, someone would remember they had tried. All ships report ready, Peter said from his station. Nicole opened her eyes. Then let's go save a world. Commander Nicole Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiance and felt calm. Around her, alarms blared and warning lights flashed. 5 enemy ships were chasing them through space, firing everything they had. Most captains would be panicking. Nicole just smiled. Helm, give me pattern 7, she said. Her voice was steady and clear. Weapons, I want constant fire on the trailing targets. Don't let them get comfortable. Yes, ma'am, said Lieutenant Kyle Morrison from the weapons station. He was young but trained well. His hands moved across the controls without hesitation. Railguns hot. Missiles ready. The Defiance spun like a dancer. Her engines pushed her into a spiral that would make most crews sick. But Nicole's people were ready for it. They had trained for this. They lived for this. The railguns fired again. The sound vibrated through the deck plates. 3 rounds hit the nearest Devourer ship. Its hull cracked. Atmosphere leaked into space. The ship slowed, damaged but not dead yet. Target 1 is hurt, Morrison reported. Hull breach on multiple decks. Good, keep hitting it. I want that one completely out of the fight. Nicole watched the tactical display with the eye of someone who had studied war her entire life. The Devourers were fast and their weapons were powerful, but they fought in patterns. They expected their enemies to use energy weapons. They expected conventional tactics. Humans did not fight conventionally. Launch mines, full spread, Nicole ordered. Peterson, I need them in a cloud formation around Grid 77. Lieutenant Amy Peterson worked the sensors. Her blonde hair was pulled back tight. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Positioning calculated. Deploying now. 300 small mines shot out from the Defiance's hull. They spread across space like seeds scattered by wind. Each one had its own tiny engine and computer brain. They looked harmless. They were anything but. The Defiance led the Devourer ships deeper into the outer system. Dead moons and asteroid fields surrounded them. The human ship wove between rocks the size of cities, moving so close that pieces of debris scraped against the shields. "They're gaining," said Lieutenant Chris Parker from the helm. "The lead ship will be in optimal firing range in 30 seconds. "Let them get close," Nicole said. "Closer they are, better this works." The Devourers sensed victory. Their weapons charged. Black energy crackled along their hulls, building to a devastating strike. The human ship was trapped between asteroids with nowhere to run. Then the Defiance spun completely around in a maneuver that should have ripped her apart. Her structural integrity field screamed in protest, but she held together. "Now," Nicole shouted. The mines activated all at once. They had been dormant, invisible to sensors. Now they came alive with targeting systems locked on the Devourer ships. 300 small engines ignited. 300 weapons raced toward 5 targets. The Devourers tried to evade. Their point defense turrets opened fire, destroying dozens of mines. But there were too many coming from too many directions. The weapons tracked independently, learning from each miss, adapting their approach. The first mine hit, then 10 more, then 50. Explosions filled space with light. The lead Devourer ship vanished in a fireball. The second ship lost its entire port side. The third spun out of control, its engines destroyed. The fourth and fifth ships pulled back, trying to escape the cloud of death that surrounded them. "All targets hit," Morrison said. 3 destroyed, 2 heavily damaged. Nicole allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. "Clean up the wounded ones. I don't want them reporting back to their friends about our tactics." The Defiance's weapons spoke again. Railguns and missiles finished what the mines had started. When the light faded, all 5 Devourer ships were debris. "Nice shooting, everyone," Nicole said. "Parker, take us back to the colony. Let's see if we can help with the evacuation." As they flew back toward Theta 7, Lieutenant Sophie Martinez spoke up from her station. She was the youngest crew member, fresh out of the academy. "Commander, why did those tactics work so well?" The Devourers seemed confused. Nicole thought about how to explain it. "They fight like most advanced species fight. Clean, efficient. They use energy weapons because they're powerful and elegant. They rely on their ability to absorb that energy. But humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the old ways work best." "You mean kinetic weapons?" "I mean adapting to your enemy," Nicole said. "We spent thousands of years fighting each other on Earth. We learned that there's no perfect weapon or perfect defense. Everything can be beaten if you're creative enough. Is that why we still use railguns? I heard some species think they're primitive." Nicole smiled. "Let them think that. While they're judging our technology, we'll be winning the fight. A tungsten rod moving at a fraction of light speed doesn't care how advanced your shields are. It just goes through them." The comm system beeped. A new voice filled the bridge. "Human vessel Defiance, this is Captain Vekthar of the Calreth fleet. I must speak with your commander." "This is Grant. Go ahead, Captain." There was a pause. When the Calreth captain spoke again, his voice held something Nicole did not expect. Respect. "Commander Grant, you have saved 3 million lives today. The Calreth are in your debt. I must know, how did you receive our distress call? This region is far from human space." Nicole glanced at her crew. They all knew the answer, but she wondered how to explain it to an alien species. "Captain, humanity has a policy. We monitor distress signals across a pretty wide range. When we heard yours, we came. Simple as that." "You traveled across hostile space to help strangers? Why?" "Because people needed help," Nicole said. The answer seemed obvious to her. "Where I come from, that's reason enough." Another pause. Nicole could almost hear the Calreth captain trying to understand. Finally, he spoke again. "Commander, I have troubling news. Our intelligence reports that the Devourers are gathering a larger fleet. They are heading toward our home system, Calreth Prime. If they attack our homeworld with full force, we cannot stop them." Nicole felt her stomach drop. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Perhaps 50 to 80 vessels. We have only 30 capital ships defending the system. After today's losses, maybe fewer." She looked at her tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Peter Hayes was older than most of the crew. Gray hair, scarred hands, a face that had seen too many battles. He shook his head slowly. The odds were terrible. "Captain Vekthar," Nicole said carefully, "does your empire have allies? Other species who might help defend your homeworld?" The answer came slowly. "We ruled this sector for 3,000 years, Commander. We made subjects, not friends. We conquered rather than cooperated. Now when we need help most, we stand alone. Nicole stood up from her chair. She paced to the viewing port where Theta 7 hung in space. The planet's surface was scarred from orbital bombardment, but it was intact. 3 million people were alive because the Defiance had come when called. You're not alone, Nicole said. The Defiance is one ship, but we're not the only human vessel in this sector. And I'm betting there are other species out there who would rather not see the Devourers win. You would help us again? After you barely know us? Nicole thought about her training at the academy. She thought about Earth's history. All those wars, all that death, all the lessons humanity had learned about what happens when good people do nothing. Captain, those Devourers out there are bullies, she said. They think they can take whatever they want because they're strong. They think no one will stand up to them. Well, humanity really doesn't like bullies. We've spent our whole history dealing with them, and we've gotten pretty good at it. Peter stepped up beside her. Commander, if we're going to do this, we need to move fast. The Devourers won't wait, Nicole nodded. Captain Vecthar, I'm going to send out a call. Every human ship in range, every species that's tired of running. We're going to gather a fleet and make a stand at your homeworld. It won't be pretty and it won't be easy, but we're going to show those things that this sector belongs to the people who live here, not to some invaders who think they own the galaxy. Commander Grant, Vecthar said quietly, why do humans do this? Your species is young. You should be explorers and scientists, not warriors. Nicole looked at her reflection in the viewing port. She saw a young woman in a military uniform. Behind her, she saw her crew, good people who had volunteered to risk their lives for strangers. We are explorers and scientists, Captain, but we're also survivors. Earth taught us that sometimes the only thing standing between innocent people and monsters is someone willing to fight. So that's what we do, we fight. Not because we want to, because we have to. She turned back to her crew. All right, people. Plot a course for the nearest comm relay. We've got a fleet to gather and a homeworld to save. Let's move. As the Defiance jumped to hyperspace, Nicole looked at the photograph she kept in her pocket. Her younger brother Jake, dead 60 years in a war that should never have happened. The war that taught humanity to be better. We're doing it right this time, she whispered. No more worlds burning? Not on my watch. Morrison looked up from his weapons station. Ma'am, I need to stay. Someone has to arm the warheads and maintain the firing sequence. If I leave, you cannot complete the mission. Amy Peterson spoke next. And someone needs to maintain the sensor lock. Otherwise, you will miss the target. Sophie Martinez stood at her station, her young face determined. Navigation needs a human operator for the final approach. The computer cannot react fast enough. One by one, the bridge crew refused to leave. Each had a reason why they were essential. Each knew what staying meant. None of them cared. Nicole felt something break and heal in her chest at the same time. You are all fools, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You know that, right? Peter smiled slightly. We learned from the best, Commander. Outside the ship, escape pods began launching. Engineering crews. Medical staff. Support personnel. 2/3 of the Defiance's complement evacuated. But the bridge crew stayed. The weapons team stayed. Everyone needed to fly the ship and trigger the detonation stayed. 147 people chose to stay and die so that others could live. Nicole took a deep breath. All right. Let us make this count. Parker, plot a course directly at that flagship. Maximum acceleration. Morrison, arm every nuclear warhead we have. Peterson, I need constant updates on their defensive systems. Martinez, link our sensor data to the fleet. Make sure they know what we are doing. The Defiance turned toward the massive Devourer flagship and accelerated. Her engines burned beyond their safety limits. Metal groaned under stress it was not designed to handle. But she held together. She had to. Across the fleet, captains watched in horror as they realized what the human ship was doing. They are going to sacrifice themselves, Vecthar whispered. All of them. War leader Kresh bared his fangs. Then we will make sure their sacrifice means something. All ships concentrate fire on that flagship. Overload their defenses. Give the humans their opening. The Allied fleet unleashed everything they had. Thousands of missiles, railgun rounds like rain, energy beams that painted space with color, all of it focused on the Devourer flagship. Most of the attacks were absorbed or deflected. But some got through. Small damages, tiny cracks in the giant's armor. The Devourer flagship noticed the approaching human ship. It was small, insignificant, damaged from previous combat. The flagship's weapons tracked it, charging for a shot that would erase it from existence. "Incoming fire," Peterson called out. "Gravitational weapon charging. 20 seconds to discharge." "Evasive," Nicole ordered. Parker threw the Defiance into a spiral that made gravity fail across the ship. Objects not secured flew through the air. People grabbed onto consoles and held on, but the maneuver worked. The gravitational beam passed 50 meters from their hull. Close enough that alarms screamed. Close enough that they felt space bend around them, but they survived. "Distance to target, 800 kilometers, Peterson said. 600. 400. The flagship turned all its weapons on them. Energy beams sliced through space. The Defiance's shields failed immediately. Hull plating vaporized. Sections of the ship opened to vacuum. Fires erupted on multiple decks. "Structural integrity at 40%, Martinez reported. Smoke filled the bridge, but her voice remained steady. "Port side is gone. We are losing atmosphere. 200 kilometers. Nicole could see the flagship on the main viewing screen now. It filled her vision. Massive and dark and terrible. Up close she could see details on its hull. Strange markings. Alien technology that humanity would never understand. It was beautiful in a horrible way. 100 kilometers. The ship shook violently. Something exploded below decks. Warning lights turned red across every console. But they were so close now. Just a little further. 50 kilometers. Nicole's hand hovered over the detonation switch. Around her, her crew worked at their stations. No panic, no screaming. Just professionals doing their jobs one last time. She was so proud of them she could barely speak. "Morrison, are the warheads ready?" "All 300 armed and synchronized, ma'am. They will crack that thing open like an egg." 25 kilometers. Nicole thought about Jake, about her brother who had died too young in a pointless war. She thought about all the people on the planet below, all the lives that would continue if this worked, all the children who would grow up because 147 humans decided their lives meant something. 10 kilometers. She looked at her crew one last time. "It has been an honor serving with you. Tell them we did our duty." 5 kilometers. The Devourer flagship fired everything at point-blank range. The Defiance's hull shattered. Engineering went dark. Life support failed. Half the bridge exploded into space, but the core held. The computer core. The weapon systems. The detonation sequence, 3 kilometers. Nicole slammed her hand down on the switch. 300 nuclear warheads detonated at once. The explosion was brighter than the system's sun. A sphere of nuclear fire expanded at impossible speed. The Defiance, already broken, disintegrated completely. Her hull became vapor. Her crew became energy. The ship that had saved millions ceased to exist in a fraction of a second, but the blast wave continued. It struck the Devourer flagship's shields at point-blank range. The shields flared brilliant blue, trying to absorb the energy. For 1 second they held. For 2 seconds they held. On the 3rd second they failed. The nuclear fire found every crack in the flagship's armor, every weak point created by the Allied fleet's desperate attack. It poured through like water through a broken dam. Internal systems overloaded. Power cores went critical. The massive vessel tried to adapt, tried to survive. It failed. The Devourer flagship split down the middle. Secondary explosions rippled along its entire length. Atmosphere vented into space in massive geysers. Pieces of hull plating the size of buildings spun away into the void. In 30 seconds, the most powerful ship in the Devourer fleet was reduced to burning wreckage. The remaining Devourer vessels stopped moving. Their hive-mind connection was disrupted. They had lost their command ship. They had lost their coordination. For the first time since arriving in this sector, they felt something close to fear. The Allied fleet did not hesitate. War Leader Kresh led the charge, his remaining ships tearing into the confused Devourers. The human vessels hammered them with railgun fire. The Calrith fleet, inspired by the sacrifice they had witnessed, fought with a fury they had never shown before. One by one, the Devourer ships died or fled. Those that tried to fight were destroyed. Those that tried to run were chased down. By the time the battle ended 3 hours later, only 7 Devourer vessels escaped into hyperspace. The Allied fleet had lost 43 ships. Thousands had died, but Calrith Prime was safe. 200 billion people would live to see another day. Captain Vekthar stood on his damaged bridge and looked at the debris field where the Defiance had died. Small pieces of gray metal drifted in space, all that remained of the ship that had saved them all. "Sir," Simral said quietly, "we are receiving evacuation signals from human escape pods. Should we recover them? Immediately. And treat them with the highest honor. They are heroes, every one of them." Across the system, ships moved to recover survivors. Most of the Defiance's crew had evacuated before the final run. But 147 had stayed behind. 147 humans who had given everything. 3 weeks later, a memorial was built on Calreth Prime. It stood in the capital city where everyone could see it. Black stone carved with names in human script and a dozen other languages. At the top, words in every language of the allied species. They came when no one else would. They stood when others fell. They gave everything so that others might live. The list of names from the Defiance was carved deep into the stone. Commander Nicole Grant at the top. Then Peter Hayes, Kyle Morrison, Amy Peterson, Sophie Martinez, Chris Parker. 147 names. 147 people who had proven that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to sacrifice for others. Beck Thar stood before the memorial with representatives from every species that had fought. War leader Kresh placed a stone at its base, a Vorshan symbol of respect. Others placed flowers and tokens. A young human woman approached. She wore a Space Navy uniform with lieutenant's insignia. Her name tag read Cooper. Her eyes were red from crying. "I was Commander Grant's friend," she said to Vekthar. "They sent me to represent Earth at the memorial service. To bring her home if we could find anything. Did you know her well? We were roommates at the academy. She used to say that humanity's greatest strength was not our weapons or technology. It was our refusal to give up when people needed help. She said that sometimes the only thing standing between innocent people and evil is someone willing to stand in the gap." Jenny Cooper looked up at the monument. "I guess she proved herself right. What will humanity do now?" Vekthar asked. "Will you claim this sector as payment for your sacrifice?" Jenny looked genuinely confused. "What? No, we will probably send some aid ships to help rebuild, maybe set up some trade routes. But claim territory?" She shook her head. "Commander Grant did not die so humanity could build an empire. She died so people could live free." Vekthar felt his understanding of the universe shift. For 3,000 years, the Calreth had believed that power meant control.